With the ending of My Hero Academia, we saw just how important Monoma's copy quirk was, and because of that I thought, why not give Izuku a very similar copy quirk and see how that might affect the story. I hope you all do enjoy this what if. It is my birthday, so as a birthday present, why don't you guys subscribe, and if you're already, why don't we go ahead and like this video. It really does help the channel out. I hope you all do enjoy this video. Once again, comment your suggestions down in the comment section below, and enjoy. Sparks fly and rear off a young child's palm. These sparks end up flying over and singe right into the forearm of our young protagonist, Izuku Midoriya. He yelps out in pain, but almost instantly he can feel something surging between his palms. Explosions start crackling from his palms, very similar to how Bakugo was just doing. All of the class looks on in shock, shifting their heads back and forth between the two young boys. Many of them confused, pointing at Izuku, calling him, rearing at him all of these insults, yelling, "Copycat, copycat, copycat." All these young 4-year-old basically preschoolers, if not kindergartners, are yelling at Izuku, calling a copycat, telling him to stop. However, Bakugo stands up, pumping his fist. "Me and Izuku have the same quirk? That's awesome!" he says, rearing up, the two best friends high-fiving with a smile. "Why are you calling him a copycat? Just because we have the same quirk doesn't mean anything," he says, as Izuku smiles, thanking Bakugo. However, the young boy's quirk is not just an explosion quirk. It is a copy quirk. Izuku can copy any quirk that inflicts any sort of effect on him, being a healing effect, pain, cold, any sort of effect a quirk inflicts on Izuku, he can copy it. So with Bakugo's sparks flying and landing on Izuku, that caused Izuku to be able to copy Bakugo's quirk. We skip forward in time to see Izuku and Bakugo going through school together. With time, Izuku would end up finding out that his quirk is not, in fact, an explosion quirk, but rather a copy quirk. Eventually, someone would end up hitting him with one of their quirks, and he'd be able to copy it, and the rest is history. He'd realize what his quirk was, and the potential that it had. With Izuku having a copy quirk, him and Bakugo would go on hoping and just training together to try and make Class 1A of the hero school, the top hero school in that fact, of UA. And so when it came time for that, in the last day of middle school, their teacher would ask the class where everyone hoped to go to school. Both Bakugo and Izuku would look towards each other before raising their hands simultaneously, saying, "We want to go to UA," they say, and become the #1 hero. A sort of friendly rivalry would form between the two. They had always looked up to All Might together, and they were going to become the #1 hero. If not them, then their counterpart would. So the teacher would smile and shake their head and wish them good luck as the bell would ring. The two of them would race out of the school before heading off home. They had 10 months' time to train for the UA entrance exam. With that, they would spend the 10 months training. Izuku would practice basically getting in the way of people using their quirks, just trying anything he could to get as many quirks as possible, and then train with them. He'd get in the way of, say, someone using telekinesis, and what they were floating would hit him in the head or something, and then he'd be able to copy it, and which would allow him to use it. And Izuku's biggest task with training was to be able to learn and use the quirk effectively, quickly, as sometimes he would be hit by a quirk and have to use it instantly and use it effectively as well. And if Izuku couldn't do that, he wouldn't be the best hero he could be. These 10 months would come and go as Izuku and Bakugo would walk in together, as they'd go take the written portion of the exam before they would walk into the building. Izuku would look around, looking at all of the other applicants there. The doors would open as Izuku and Bakugo both would use explosions flying out easily in front of the pack, raining down explosions one by one onto each and every robot in their path. Izuku would do this effectively until he would end up seeing Todoroki using his fire and ice ability, sending it out flying everywhere. Izuku would easily get in the way of one of Todoroki's ice attacks, causing Izuku to be able to use it. And because of that, he would now have his second strongest ability. He had Bakugo's explosion quirk, and until now, that was pretty much the only capable fighting quirk he had. All the other quirks that he had to use and learn by getting in the way of people were really just civilian level quirks, like Inko's low level telekinesis quirk. And because of that, with two now really powerful quirks, Izuku's power basically multiplied by 2. He would go in shooting ice at each one of the robots as the heroes up top on the observation deck would look confused. That boy there, zoom in on him. They zoom in, seeing Izuku using both ice and explosions. At the start, he was only using the explosions like that other boy. However, now he's using Todoroki's ice. Interesting. Could he possibly have one of the rare copy quirks? Yes, maybe, Nezu says, as they go back to Izuku, destroying even more robots. The horn would sound as Izuku would smile, meeting back up with Bakugo, seeing as they'd calculate, trying to do the math of how many points each one of them had managed to receive. Izuku would end up tallying up the points in his head and would say out 60. Bakugo would say 59. Izuku, smiling, would pump his fist in the air. Just like always, the copycat beats the original. Maybe I'm just better than you, Bakugo, he says, rolling his eyes as Bakugo just laughs. Yeah, sure. Sure you are, copycat, he says, as the two of them would walk home together. A couple of weeks would pass as it becomes time for their first day of UA. They walk in, sitting down, looking around at all of the other students around them. They smile towards some of them, talking to a few, with Izuku making friends with, of course, Chako Uraraka and Tenya Ida. They would begin talking about wondering who their teacher could be, knowing that most of the first-year teachers were Present Mike and Aizawa, Eraserhead. And because of that, they were quite eager. They wondered what they could possibly be doing, what is going to happen with their first day. Aizawa walks in, seeing all of the students talking amongst themselves as he yells for them to quiet down. He tells them go to Lot E as they are going to be doing a Quirk apprehension test. All of the students walk down, making it to Lot E with no trouble at all. From here, Aizawa tosses a ball to Izuku. He sees Izuku ready his arm, shooting off explosions in it as he launches it into the air as the ball falls down, getting Izuku 700 points. He tosses the ball to Bakugo next, as Bakugo does the exact same, getting 700 points or meters as well. Aizawa looks towards both of them and asks, so, why do you two have the same quirk? Is it luck or something else? Izuku laughs so lightly. Well, you see, I actually have a copy quirk. Interesting. How does this copy quirk work? Well, you see, anytime a quirk really hits me or affects me, I can copy it. And that's really about it. That's all I know of to be the effects that allow me to use it. Aizawa subtly nods before tossing the ball to the next person. This would go on as we then see the next event ensuing. However, we see the bushes rattling not so far off from where all of our students are practicing. We see a blue-haired, scraggly young boy looking at them. Tomura Shigaraki. He stares from a distance, viciously scratching his dry neck, peeling the dry skin off of it. 1A, he says in his deep, raspy voice. So, is our intel true, Kirogiri? He says as Kirogiri looks towards him. I don't see All Might yet. However, I do have a sneaking suspicion he is going to be their hero class teacher. Perfect. Then, set the sights on for the USJ. will infiltrate it and take him down. And maybe even a couple of the students as well. We can't let them get too powerful. Kurogiri nods before opening up a portal behind him. Tomura takes one last look towards all of the students before walking into the portal. He gets into the League of Villains bar before sitting down. So, how was it? All for One says towards him. He shakes his head. He sighs. The class doesn't look very strong. However, there are a few outliers. A couple of kids with explosion quirks, and then a fire and ice quirk. Possibly Endeavor's son. Interesting. Any of them worth stealing? Shigaraki shakes his head no. They all seem too complicated. He sighs. When will the Nomu be ready? In exactly a week and a half. 9 days. Shigaraki smiles. Perfect. The USJ will come, and All Might will be no longer. We cut back to see Izuku and his classmates walking back to the classroom, all of them sweaty and tired from their long day of practicing their quirks. They make it back inside as Izuku smiles. He sees all of his classmates around him, and he knows that this is going to be fun. He has all of these new quirks that he can supposedly copy, and if he asks, I'm sure that they'll let him copy them. So, as Izuku does this, we see him go back to his home, seeing Inko sitting at the dinner table. She stands up, pushing the chair back behind her. So, Izuku, how was it? She says with a smile on her face as Izuku brings her in for a tight hug. It was awesome, Mom. I can't wait. This year is going to be so fun. I can't wait to be a hero, he says one last time to her before going up to his room, preparing for bed. A week and a half ends up passing as All Might races into the room. They hadn't even started their hero classes, and now they were going to begin. He slams his fist into the door, deciding, very interestingly, to make an entrance. The door splinters and shatters off of its hinges as All Might stands in the doorway of it. I am here, he yells with his hands at his hips. The class marvels, stars in their eyes. No way, some of them say, jumping up from their seats. All Might's our hero teacher? They say in shock and excitement. Yup, that's right. And I bring to you all your hero costumes. Head down to the locker rooms and put these on before meeting me in front of the building. Don't be late, he says in his deep, hearty voice as all of the students race off eagerly down to the locker rooms to put their uniforms on. As they put their costumes on, they go to the front of the building, seeing All Might in front of a bus. Nezu gave me the option to either take you on a student versus student training, or I could take you to the USJ, one of UA's finest facilities, a large dome filled with different types of areas to practice your quirk in all sorts of different circumstances. And I thought the latter would be the better option. I know. Thank me later. So, get on the bus, students, and we will be off. All of the students get on the bus as Aizawa and All Might take attendance, looking down at their sheet, crossing off every single student that stands or sits on the bus. The bus speeds off to the USJ building as all of the students watch out the window, watching as the UA campus comes and goes. Until they arrive, they all pile out of the bus as 13 is standing there waiting. She greets All Might there with a firm handshake along with Aizawa. It's glad you two could make it, she says almost in a joking tone, before walking in, pushing the two giant front doors open, showing all of the students the amazing USJ building. The students gasp in shock. This is amazing, some say. Wow, it's huge, others say as well. We then see, unfortunately, a purple portal spread out and open up before them in the center of the USJ. Aizawa and All Might look towards 13 and ask her, Is this some sort of surprise for the students? They say, almost in a confused tone. 13, in a weary and shaky voice, says, what's going on? She reaches down towards her phone, clicking a couple of buttons eagerly. No, this is something else entirely. I have no idea what this is, she says, as the portal opens up. Villains start scattering out of the portal. Portals spread out around the USJ, spewing villains out of them. They all look with bloodlust, staring towards Class 1A. All Might, seeing this, immediately jumps down along with 13 and Aizawa as they begin fighting the villains in the middle. This actually is the perfect opportunity. The three of them so shocked by a villain attack on the UA campus at UA students, they didn't realize that they were leaving them alone, causing Kirogiri to open up a portal beneath all of them and spread them out. Izuku would be placed on the boat. However, because of the way he fell, he'd fall head first, knocking himself out on one of the boat railings. Because of this, Mineta and Asui would be left there alone, without Izuku to help them. Villains start climbing up the side of the boat rail, peering over at both Mineta and Asui. Mineta starts shaking in his boots. He can't believe it. This cannot be happening. Izuku's eyes start fluttering open. He looks up to see Mineta standing there, a villain right in front of him. The villain smiles towards him, whipping his lizard-like tail at Mineta's face, making direct contact with him, sending him flying into one of the glass windows on the deck, shattering it. Mineta barely stands up, blood rushing down from the top of his scalp, one of the purple balls on his head missing, somehow cut off from the glass. Another villain walks up to Mineta, grabbing him in the neck, clenching it tightly, before tossing the young child over to someone else. I can't believe they let someone so short into Class 1A. But not me, the person says, looking towards Mineta, maniacally towards him. His arm smooths into a blade, his arm turning into a weapon, slashing at Mineta's neck, cutting it cleanly. Mineta's head and body slump to the floor. Izuku, now fully out of his daze, stands up in complete shock. His classmate, his friend, his body lay limp, dead, his head rolling down to the floor, falling off right through one of the railing's holes as the head lands in the water with a splash. Izuku looks on in horror, and so does Asui. Asui backs up, being surrounded by villains, as Izuku sends sparks flying behind him, explosions bursting him towards her. But it's too late. The knife arm villain makes both his arms into a knife, slicing Asui's tongue right off. With no more tongue, all she had was her fists to defend herself. She tried to jump into the water to get away, but the lizard would grab her, wrapping his tail around her leg before she could get over the railing. With that, the knife villain slashes her through the chest, piercing her heart, killing her as well. Asui and Mineta, the first victims of the USJ incident. Izuku, completely shocked, stares on towards the mass of villains who turn towards him. Well, are you ready to die just like your friends? They say, sneering towards Izuku with bile in their mouths. This malice towards Izuku, it was so strong. What could he have done to make them hate him so much? Izuku shakes his head, still almost in denial about it. Why? Why would you... He can't believe it, his voice and words fumbling over each other as the villains would bum rush him. Izuku sends an iceberg towards them, freezing them encapsulating them in this iceberg as he sits down, falling back into one of the seats on the front deck. He stares towards Monetta's limp body, missing its head, looking towards it. I can't believe this. Monetta. Asui. We cut back to the middle of the USJ. We see 13, All Might, and Aizawa take clean and quick care of all of the villains there. Because All Might was there from the beginning, they could very easily take care of them all. And so All Might would then be left to fend for himself against the Nomu. Izuku would swim out towards the middle, jumping into the water, swimming towards them as he would get up, coughing out water. Aizawa would go down, jumping towards him, asking if he's alright, as Izuku would shake his head. Monetta and Asui. What about them? Aizawa would say, stuttering. They're dead. Izuku's voice would pause in the middle of his sentence. Aizawa's eyes would drop, his face completely devoid of emotion. What? How? Villains, they climbed the boat, and I was knocked out. I couldn't help. I couldn't save them. It's okay. It's okay, Izuku. Just come on. We have to go find your other classmates before this happens again. They race off towards a thundering part of the city. An artificial rain cloud stands above it. They walk in, the streets eerily silent, each raindrop hitting down like thunder. Every single footstep, they feel as though they're being watched. They look around each corner, calling for their classmates. However, there's no one around. They turn into a corner, finding another body. There lay Mina Ashido, her body starting to melt from its own acid. As Aizawa stands there, shocked. I can't, no way. No way. There has to be others, he says, turning towards Izuku, knowing that they have to act. This isn't the time to freeze up. They race off, looking around, running now around the city, looking for any signs of life. With Izuku and Aizawa rushing around, looking for any other students, however, all of a sudden, they are both forced to stop. They can't move, their feet shaking beneath them as a dark villain walks from around a corner. Well done, you two. It seems you have finally found where we've been hiding. This villain saying in a sort of dark tone. Villains scatter out from around, all of them, surrounding both Aizawa and Izuku. It seems you're gonna find the same fate as your fellow classmate over there. That pink girl. Disgusting, he says, looking towards them, staring on towards them, his quirk, his eyes glowing red, his quirk forcing Izuku and Aizawa into place. They can't move and they're scared. This quirk very similar to that of Conqueror's Haki, and because of that, Izuku and Aizawa are trapped there as these villains begin coming closer. Aizawa barely managing to scrape his head, looking towards Izuku, whispering towards him, Izuku, try using it. You said your quirk can copy anything that affects you. Try using that quirk on them. Izuku, looking at Aizawa, nods his head. Yes, sir, he says, trying to activate it, barely being able to do so. However, once he does it in full force, placing all of the villains around him down to their knees, all of them feeling like gravity is falling upon them. They can't stand up. One by one, Izuku and Aizawa would go around, knocking each of them out unconscious. With that, Izuku and Aizawa would make their way back to the center. They see All Might struggling against the Nomu, his hands weakening, shaking, back as the Nomu would screech, punching him back and forth. Aizawa would look towards Izuku as the two would nod, racing in towards the middle to help him. Izuku would jump in, sending an explosion right into the Nomu's face as he would go flying into the water, buying All Might time. Izuku would look back towards All Might, yelling at him that him and Aizawa can take care of the Nomu for now. He needs to rest and get his strength back up. All Might would shake his head. No, young Midoriya, it isn't safe. That thing, it rivals my strength, nearly outweighing me, outstrengthening me. You don't understand it, he says as Izuku shakes his head in disagreement. No, All Might, no. You have to get stronger. If you fall, we have no chance. All Might would sigh, knowing that Izuku was right. The Nomu would screech up, jumping out of the water. However, before it could go at either Izuku and Aizawa, a hand would be outstretched towards Izuku. Shigaraki racing in towards him. He knew who Izuku was all too well. He reaches his hand out towards him, his 5 fingers outstretched. However, Izuku, seeing this in the corner of his eye, barely manages to dodge, quickly sending an iceberg right towards Shigaraki. This iceberg coming flailing up, piercing one of Shigaraki's hands right through it. He screams out in pain, holding his wrist, yelling out, cursing Izuku's name. How dare you! How dare you hurt me, he says in his raspy voice, going to scratch his neck with his pierced hand, but he can't. He lifts up his hand out of the iceberg, each inch screaming in pain and agony as his hand falls down limp at his side. He rushes Izuku once again, racing towards him with his hand outstretched. However, Aizawa stops him, erasing his quirk and wrapping him in his scarf. However, before he can do anything further, Kirogiri steps in, putting a portal underneath Shigaraki, allowing the two to escape, leaving the Nomu there alone, along with all the other villains. As we hear this happening, we look on to see the front part of the USJ burst open. With no one protecting it now, the rest of the UA teachers could jump in. They had finally arrived thanks to Ida and were now here to help. However, they arrived seconds too late. The Nomu would race in towards Izuku, slamming his fist into him, punching him rapidly, and punch after punch. Izuku, blood coughing and spurting out of his mouth. Each punch felt like his organs inside of him were being ripped from the inside out. However, Izuku had bought enough time. All Might jumps in, slamming a fist right into the Nomu's head, a lucky punch that sent brain and skull fragments right into the brain, severing it, causing the Nomu's eyes to roll back, killing it. We cut forward a short hour as we see Izuku sitting on the outside USJ steps. He has a blanket around him, along with the rest of his classmates. We see body after body being removed from the USJ, each one covered by a blanket as they set them down in front of the steps. A total of 15 Class 1A students had been killed. 15. All that remained were Izuku, Bakugo, Todoroki, Momo, and Uraraka. However, all of a sudden, the doors would jump open. Tenya Ida, a previously missing student, along with Toru Hagakure, would rush out the door. The two of them had Ida had managed to find her. He had also been missing as well, and so that brings the death count down to 13. 13 of the original 20 UA first-year students had died in the USJ incident. The bodies would be placed out in stretchers before them, blankets covering their face, as the last remaining 7 would stand over them, looking over their bodies, tears racing down their eyes. They can't believe it. They just simply can't. There's just no way. How did they let this happen? How did the UA teachers let this happen? Anger would bubble up in a couple of them, but it wouldn't really matter. They knew it wasn't their fault. It was the villain's fault for even attacking them in the first place. They would go back towards UA, riding on the bus. A once lively, filled bus with chatter and communication was now eerily silent. Nobody wanted to talk. All of their friends, many of them, had perished. They got back towards 1A classroom as they would sit down. The once filled class now left piling full of empty seats. They would sit down as Nezu would walk in, a solemn look on his face. I know all of you just lived through probably the biggest tragedy you might ever experience in your hero life. I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say. I've never been in this situation, but there will be counseling services for those who need it, and the UA Sports Festival will be in a month. Just letting you know. I'm sorry, once again. He says, his calm, silent voice emanating throughout the classroom as the students just sit there. I can't believe this, they say, thinking about this. However, Toru would stand up. I'm sorry, Nezu, but I'm leaving, she says, not wanting to deal with this any further. She stands up, placing her tie down on the desk. I don't want to die, Nezu. I don't want to. And the USJ incident made me realize that. Her voice would start to croak, tears streaming down her invisible face. It's just... so many of my friends died, people I've only known for a week and a half, but yet their death speaks volumes to me. And I know I can't be a hero. I'm sorry. She walks out of the classroom, sliding the door open as Nezu shakes his head. I understand. Anybody else not want to be a hero? I fully understand why. The class looks around, the remaining 6 of them looking towards each other. However, no one decides to leave. They all want to be heroes, and they're not going to let their classmates' and friends' deaths be in vain. They stand there, all shocked and confused, as Izuku and his classmates would walk out. Nezu would stop them all. Because of this, all of you, you're moving to dorms on the campus, effective immediately. You're going to be under 24/7 watch. They'd walk into the newly established dorms as they'd all sit down, looking towards each other, the remaining 6 sitting on the couch. They honestly can't believe it. This is what it has come to, and now they're the last ones left. They know that the sports festival is in a month, and they want to make their friends proud. And so they begin training together, all 6 of them working cohesively, training their quirks, which allows Izuku to gain these other quirks. He gains Todoroki's Fireside as well, gaining Uraraka's Gravity quirk, gaining Ida's Engines, and Momo's Creation. Izuku, now with all of these quirks in hand, is prepared. He cannot wait. As the month comes and goes, they walk into school, their uniforms tight and orderly, as Aizawa greets them. Go make us proud, he says, looking towards them with a small smile on his face. Make them proud, he says, pointing towards the wall, pointing towards a picture of the original members of Class 1A that they had hung up. Don't forget their sacrifice, he says, as they nod, saying yes. They all walk out, walking into the sports festival, the world, Japan, knowing about the tragedy and seeing all of these students walk out defiantly sent a message. They were here to stand, and they weren't going to let anybody stop that. As they walk out, they all look around, the crowd cheering, some crying, many of the parents of the deceased students crying as well. With that, Midnight comes over the loudspeaker, asking the crowd to give a moment of silence. As the silence comes to a close, they all lift their heads, looking towards them as Midnight announces the first race. And it was a race, the first event, the race. As all of the students pick their heads up, they walk to the starting line, jumping towards it as 3, 2, 1, go. Midnight interrupts their thoughts, counting down, yelling for them to go as they all rush off, racing towards the finish line, the obstacles barely mattering to Class 1A. They had been training together and efficiently. They easily surpassed the likes of anybody around them. Running around, Izuku gliding on his ice before jumping over a giant hole in the ground, sending explosions over him as he does this across the minefield as well. As the zero-pointer robots look down towards him, he sends fire blazing towards it, burning the robot's head, smelting it into the others as it falls, collapsing down. The rest of his classmates follow suit, each finishing, the remaining 6 finishing in places 1 through 6. The crowd would cheer, all jumping from their seats in excitement. They all yell out, congratulating them, chanting their names. As the next battle would begin, the next event, the cavalry battle. With this being teams of 4, they all decided to only stick together. They were going to do teams of 3 instead. 2 teams, Izuku, Bakugo, and Ida, with Todoroki, Uraraka, and Momo. With these teams, they would then begin creating sort of a alliance between themselves, as all of the other students would bum rush towards them, racing towards that 10 million point headband. They would protect each other. As a team would go for Izuku's head, reaching towards that 10 million point headband, Todoroki would block them with a torrent of ice or fire, Momo creating a cannon, sending out cannonballs barreling towards them, each of them knowing they had to stick together and protect themselves. As the horn sounds, we see that the 2 Class 1A teams had managed to slot themselves in with the first and second place. Because of this, Izuku's first matchup would be still up against Shinso. He would look staring across the arena, staring towards Shinso, wondering what he was going to try and pull, what his quirk would be. However, due to Izuku's research of Side and having a lot more time on his hands, he had researched all of the first-year students' quirks, and this had left him with the knowledge that he had some sort of brainwashing quirk. Izuku would keep his distance, looking towards Shinso, as Shinso would start blaring questions, yelling questions towards Izuku. This is where Izuku would realize that Shinso has a question brainwashing quirk, and he would assume that he probably has to answer one of the questions to have this quirk go into effect. Because of that, Izuku wouldn't answer a thing. He would dodge all of the questions, not answering anything, not saying a word, racing towards him before shooting, lifting up his hand, swooshing it down towards the floor, sending an iceberg right towards Shinso. This giant ball of ice, the huge wall coming straight towards him, left Shinso no choice. He had been knocked out and off the arena. With that, Izuku's next fight would end up being against Tetsu, Kirishima's supposed successor, a very similar quirk to him. As Izuku would stand across from him, Tetsu would slam his forearms into each other, hardening them like steel. As he would race towards Izuku, he would see the silver boy jumping towards him, slamming his fist into the ground, shattering some of the concrete beneath him. Izuku would turn his head almost confused as he would see Tetsu rushing back at him again. He would send a flurry of fire right towards him as his forearm would seemingly start to drip away. The steel, his body seemed to be almost melting. Izuku's fire quirk was a direct counter towards Tetsu's quirk, leaving him weak and soft. This allowed Izuku to send an explosion right into Tetsu's stomach, sending him flying back, weakening his steel once more. He would hit the back of his head on the arena, knocking him out cold once again. With Izuku defeating Tetsu, he was now going off towards the finals, and would of course be headed off against Bakugo. The two would stand face to face against each other as they would both smile. "So are you only going to use your explosion quirk, Izuku?" he says, looking at his best friend, as Izuku would nod his head. "Of course. Explosion quirk for explosion quirk." "Let's do this," he says, the two of them making an agreement, Izuku only using his explosion quirk that he had copied, of course, from Bakugo. The two of them would jump towards each other, leaping off, as Izuku would send explosion after explosion, barreling his way. Bakugo would dodge each of them, barely managing to, as Bakugo would then shift his feet, turning them, sending an explosion right into Izuku's head. He would jump back in pain, wincing from it as the burn marks would singe in deep into his skin. He would jump towards Bakugo once again, sending a flurry of explosions his way. Bakugo barely managing to dodge all of them. He had been born with this quirk his whole life, and although Izuku had been able to copy it and use it, he wasn't as familiar with it because it wasn't his quirk. It was just a copy. So as Izuku would continue, cracks in his armor would begin showing. Bakugo would land a couple hits here and there, chipping away at Izuku's endurance, and eventually it would falter. He would fall down to one knee, breathing heavy, as Bakugo would come in, an explosion at the ready, going right towards his head, but he would stop. The crowd gasps, all on the edge of their seats, looking on, not wanting to breathe, not wanting to blink, not wanting to miss what happens next. Bakugo goes in, going for that final explosion, and stopping shocked them all, and it did shock Izuku as well. He looks towards Bakugo, seeing this, as Bakugo would smile. "You are just a copy, after all," he would say, before beginning his explosion once more, as Izuku would smile. "Foolish for you to imagine I'd agree to terms that allow you to win," Izuku said, as he would encase Bakugo in ice, completely encasing him in a prison, as Bakugo's eyes would stare, burning hatred towards him. Looking towards him, Izuku couldn't hear what Bakugo was saying, but he could tell. He could tell that Bakugo was whining, saying how what Izuku did was unfair and cheap. But it is a part of his quirk after all, and you gotta do whatever you gotta do to win. Izuku would smile as the crowd would erupt in cheers. The podium would begin forming as Izuku would stand atop of it, Midnight throning him with the first place medal. The students would walk back into the locker room, all greeting each other, as they would congratulate both Izuku, Bakugo, and Todoroki for holding all of the top 3 spots. As they would do this, Aizawa and All Might would walk in, smiles on their faces. "Congratulations, guys. You've made us very proud. There's going to be letters in each of your mailboxes at the dormitories. Those letters will be letters for your internships and offers for where you can go. I expect all of you to make the right choice. Good luck with that," he says, smiling, giving them a nod, as they would all race off, eager to find out where they were going to be interning at. As they race off, Izuku, Todoroki, and Bakugo would all receive their letters, opening them eagerly after lifting open their mailbox flap. Inside, they would see a flurry of letters, especially Izuku and Bakugo getting first and second. However, none was more apparent than the Endeavor Agency ones. Izuku, Bakugo, and Todoroki would all look towards each other before nodding their heads. Yup, they all decided to take the Endeavor Agency offers. And because of that, they would all be working together. The three of them would arrive at Endeavor's agency as he would eagerly invite all of them in. Before instantly beginning their hero work, they would race around Hosu City, defeating a torrent of strong villains. With Endeavor and the three strongest first years, they made quick work of it. Izuku would also ensure that he could copy Endeavor's quirk, managing to barely get hit in some of the crossfire, as he knew Endeavor would not just willingly give up his quirk like that. So with these even stronger flames than Todoroki's, Izuku now had a stronger half-and-half quirk than even him. However, of course, not being born with it doesn't exactly understand how to use it to its fullest potential. The night would come as the sun would set. The Hosu incident would begin. Nomus would spew out of alleyways, all screeching, beginning to enact chaos. Endeavor, seeing this, would know that he can't leave his students alone. However, he also can't stay with them, that he has to trust him on this as he yells for them to stick together. They have to continue fighting together and to not lose one another. The three of them would begin this onslaught, fighting Nomu after Nomu, their powerful quirks intertwining with each other, the fire, ice, and the explosion quirk mixing together, Izuku blending some of all three, even using some of that Conqueror's Haki quirk that he had managed to get at the USJ. As he would do this, all of them would end up hearing a yell in pain. They would rush off into a couple of back alleys, searching, desperately looking for where it came from until they would find it. The hero killer Stain standing over a body. They see another hero slumped over next to a dumpster. They check his pulse, seeing that he was dead. They see Stain lift up his sword to give one final slash towards him as Bakugo jumps towards him, going for an explosion. Izuku sending ice along with Todoroki, trying to freeze him, but they were seconds too late. The sword came down faster than it went up, slashing the boy through the chest. Bakugo slams an explosion right into Stain's head as he goes flying into a wall. Izuku and Todoroki both slamming their elbows into him, yelling at him why did he do this, as they look over, not realizing who he had killed. There, on the floor, lay the boy of Tenya Ida, his body now growing colder and colder with every passing second. Due to Stain's attacking Ida's older brother, Tenya had gone out looking for him, trying to get revenge, and because of that, it had cost him his life. Ida was no longer a member of Class 1A, joining the original deceased members. As they stood there, Izuku would knock Stain out as Todoroki would look towards him. Another one. I can't believe this, he would say, before a portal, a goopy gray portal, would spiral, forming from the hallway. Clapping would be seen, heard throughout, echoing off of the narrow walls. Well done, you three. I can't say I'm surprised. However, who would have guessed the three strongest members, or should I say, remaining members of the first year class managed to survive, he said, looking towards them. He would laugh slightly as he would then outstretch his arm towards Todoroki, gripping Todoroki's head. His hand would shine. Todoroki's hair would begin fading, going from white and red all the way back to brown. His hair was no longer the two matching sides of his cork. He would slump, his eyes rolling back to his head, slumping down, his body completely exhausted, as the person would begin laughing, fire and ice shooting out of each of their palms, respectively. So, which one of you will offer me your cork next? How about you, Izuku? Why don't you come here? He says, as Bakugo would jump in, knocking him out, trying to at least. However, Bakugo would be the one getting knocked out. All for One would slam the back of his hand, back slapping him into the dumpster, knocking Bakugo out cleanly. We finally meet, Midoriya. I can't believe it's been so long since I've last seen you. What? Izuku says, muttering under his breath. Really? You don't sense the connection? Izuku, please. You have to know who I am. No. Why would I know who you are? What did you do to Todoroki? Izuku says, his voice raising as All for One would laugh. I'm, say, borrowing his cork. He would laugh once more as Izuku would stare on in confusion. What do you mean, borrowing it? Well, you see, I was gifted the rare ability to steal corks of those around me. So, it kind of is fitting that you had a more heroic version of mine, being able to copy corks around. Don't you get it yet, Izuku? You're smart. Pick up the context clues here. Read between the lines. Connect the dots. No. There's no way. That's right. I'm Hisashi Midoriya. What? No. He would say, whispering under his breath. He couldn't believe it. You can't be. I am your father, Izuku. No. No, Izuku would say. His corks would begin raging out. He couldn't control them. His brain just completely confused. He had just revealed himself. His father was the League of Villains. His father was the one who killed all of his classmates. Yup. That's right. I am your father. Don't you see it, Izuku? Everything I have done has been for you. You were never meant to be a hero. You were meant to follow me. Become my successor. And I know I wasn't there for you. I was busy. I know I wasn't, but I can be there for you now. Join me, Izuku. Or should I say, son? Izuku, shaking his head subtly, would take a step back. Why? Why would you hurt all those innocent people? Why would you kill all of my friends? Foolish boy. It seems your mother didn't teach you very well. I'm kind of surprised she seduced me into marrying her, but that's a mistake from the past. Can't worry about it any longer. However, you, my boy, you I can change. I can fix you. Any cork you desire will be yours. Take my hand and I can give you my cork. I can pass it down to you, and you can defeat All Might. Defeat One for All, and finally prove the Midoriya name successful. Izuku, staring towards him again, his corks would begin blending together. His voice shaking, stuttering. He can't believe it. His corks would begin flowing out of his body, escaping out of him almost in anger. He can't control them. They would begin molding to each other. The fire and explosions, the ice, everything would mold together. All of a sudden, the Conqueror's Haki Quirk would activate as All for One would sink to the ground, bending his knee towards Izuku as his head would bow down. "What are you doing, Izuku?" His head would shake, Izuku grabbing his face, almost peeling back the skin, his fingernails digging deep into his face. "No, no, no," he would say, his quirks all exploding out of him. Waves of explosions, fire, ice, all exploding out as All for One would go down into the ground even further, sinking below it. "You don't know what you're doing, boy," he would say towards him. However, Izuku couldn't control it, and eventually blood would spew from All for One's mouth. An iceberg, a rogue iceberg, had erupted from Izuku's body, spearing right through All for One's chest. And due to Izuku's Conqueror's Haki Quirk, he couldn't do anything to stop it. All for One, coughing out blood, would look towards Izuku, yelling that he made a mistake, and he was going to die, no matter what it cost him. All for One, seeing this lapse in Izuku, seeing this, would be able to move his hand very hard down to the ground, slamming it into the ground as electrical current would flow through it, flowing, finding its way, moving through the city like a circuit, finding Tomura Shigaraki. Tomura, seeing there, would instantly start shaking as if he was seizing. He was gaining All for One, the quirk. All for One stockpiled quirks would scatter, fueling in to Shigaraki, as All for One, now quirkless, would lay there, seeing Izuku taking his last breaths, shaking his head. "You made a mistake, son," he would say, slumping to the floor. Izuku, seeing this, would instantly snap out of his maniac episode, running towards both Bakugo and Todoroki, shaking them, trying to get them awake. Endeavor would end up finding them, seeing his boy with brown hair, confused, as he would race the boys to the hospital, where he would find out Todoroki is now quirkless. Months would pass. Izuku would go on the forest training camp with Bakugo and Momo. Uraraka, seeing that Todoroki had lost his quirk and Ida had died, had put in the towel. She was yet another casualty in the 1A massacre. Although she hadn't died, she had given up, leaving her tie with Nezu. With only 3 remaining students left in Class 1A, Todoroki, of course, not being able to continue without a quirk, Bakugo and Momo, along with Izuku, would all begin training. They had known from the very beginning that All for One was not gone. Due to Izuku's encounter with him, All Might had warned the 3 of them that Shigaraki was his likely successor. After Izuku had found out he was the son, it really made sense that Izuku declining it, he would give it to the next best option, the blue-haired boy from the USJ incident. And so we would see the heroes racing around the city. They had been looking for the hideout, the villain hideout, for months, and finally, they were going to find it. The day had finally come. Izuku, Momo, and Bakugo sit in the calm, empty dorm rooms, the AC off and cold. It was a death trap, a death mission, rather. They knew it was going to end here, and they knew they were probably going to die. Shigaraki, his quirks, everything. He was the final battle. All of this had been prepared. They knew a war was brewing. Izuku would get a call. All Might was on the phone. "It's time. Bring Bakugo and Momo with you." "Yes, sir," Izuku said, his voice cold and calloused. He has seen so many of his classmates die, and now he was basically walking into another guarantee. He couldn't quite believe it, but if it meant saving the lives of the innocent, then it had to be done. Izuku and Bakugo would walk over to All Might as Momo would walk to Midnight. They were going to go separate ways. Midnight's group, along with Mount Lady and countless other heroes, were tasked with taking care of Gigantomachia, while All Might, Izuku, and Bakugo were going to be in the middle lines fighting Shigaraki. Mirio, Best Jeanist, all of these heroes, Hawks even, they were tasked with taking out Shigaraki. As they would creep closer and closer towards the day, they would finally find the hideout, a giant warehouse at the edge of Hosu City. All Might would jump in, slamming a hole right through the ceiling, as heroes upon heroes would pile in. The League of Villains looking on in shock as Shigaraki would jump up, yelling for Gigantomachia to come towards him, ordering the person to find him. This is where the other heroes would come in. Midnight, Momo, and Mount Lady, and the rest of the heroes tasked with taking care of him would jump in. Midnight growing towards her giant form, grabbing hold of Machia as he would begin thrashing at her grasp, not wanting her to get through, not wanting her to defeat him. As this would continue, we see Shigaraki stand up, his long white hair touching the floor. He would say in almost a crazy-like sigh, "It seems we finally met, Izuku. You see, I never could get Master to like me as much as he liked you. You, a hero student, all because he was your father. And yet he rescued me, and he never cared like he cared for you." His voice, his words filled with malice as he would jump in, boosting himself off the throne, floating, using his grandmother's quirk, Nana Shimura's float, flying in the air, jumping down, leaping towards Izuku. Fire raining down Todoroki's quirk as Izuku would go to dodge, sending out Endeavor's fire as well. As Todoroki would smile, jumping back, sending maniacal circuits, that's All For One had given him, down towards him, shooting out, his arm and his fingers extending into these long, protruding things. Izuku would jump back as Mirio would slide into the floor, jumping towards Shigaraki, barely managing to get a punch, yelling out power, but it would do nothing. Shigaraki was almost a Nomu at this point. He was maniacal and had completely lost his mind. Izuku and his group would continue fighting the battle, All Might sending punches, flailing towards Shigaraki, but it was no use. Shigaraki was leagues ahead of All Might. Izuku, seeing that Shigaraki about to send another blow flying towards him, knowing that this would surely kill All Might and a couple other heroes surrounding him, would use the Shigaraki's quirk, the circuit one, flailing towards him as well, managing to barely block it. This attack that Izuku had sent, barely managing to dodge it, bought them enough time. Bakugo would jump in, sending an explosion right towards Shigaraki's back, shooting him forward as All Might would slam him down to the ground. He was getting overpowered. Shigaraki knew this. Bakugo would send explosion after explosion towards him. Izuku, using his ice, would encapsulate his feet, keeping him there, allowing him to not move a foot. All Might, racing in, would send a flurry of punches barreling towards him before Shigaraki would yell, "Enough!" Everyone would get sent flying back. Ice walls shooting out around them, making them all dodge. I've had enough playing around. Enough joking with all of you. It's time to end this. Bakugo would yell, screaming in pain, screaming in agony. He wanted to be the one to kill Shigaraki. After everything this blue-haired freak had done, he raced towards Shigaraki, sending an explosion his way. But it wouldn't work. Shigaraki, having stolen one of the Quirks from the past, the bladed Quirk from the villain that had killed Mineta and Asui, had sliced a hole right through Bakugo, the sword deepening through Bakugo's chest. He had only jumped into it, Shigaraki only outstretching his arm towards Bakugo's chest, as he would jump basically into this wound before Shigaraki would lower it, Bakugo's body sliding off. He would begin coughing blood out as Izuku and All Might would rush to his side. Bakugo, no, he would say, reaching down, pulling his palm into the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. You can't go, you can't. I've lost too many people, Bakugo. You can't die. It's okay, Izuku. It's okay. Just beat him. Beat him for me. And beat him for them. He would say, his voice growing softer. He would stop breathing as his body and head would relax, slumping back in Izuku's arms. Izuku's tears would fall down, dripping onto Bakugo's chest, mixing with the blood. Izuku would cry out, yelling out in pain. He can't believe it. As he does this, he would finally activate his Conqueror's key Quirk. Shigaraki, who's floating in the air, would instantly be sent tumbling down to the ground. Just a wave of gravity felt like it was on his shoulders, a weight he couldn't move. Izuku, looking towards him in pain and agony. He would say, you will die here, just like all of my other friends. He would say, slicing through Shigaraki's chest with Todoroki's ice, batting him down just like his master had done before. Both all for one, and Shigaraki dying at the hands of Izuku's ice. Izuku would stand there above him, standing, looking over Shigaraki's body, tears welling up in his eyes as he would fall to his knees, looking towards the sky, asking, muttering over and over again, why? He's so filled with pain, not physically, not anywhere, but in his heart. His heart hurt. Everyone he had known and befriended in Class 1A was gone. All Might would walk up to Izuku, wounded, patting him on the back, hugging him. It's okay, young Midoriya. It's okay. It's over now. It's over. We cut to the Gigantomachia battle. He had managed to rampage through all of the heroes surrounding them, somehow managing to kill each and every single one of them. However, though, due to Shigaraki's death, he served no purpose anymore, and hearing and feeling Shigaraki's death, the weight of having to protect him was over. He would slump to the floor in exhaustion before dying. He had no purpose anymore, and being one of the basically a giant Nomu, there was no point to continue. His purpose had been served and failed. We fast forward in time as Izuku graduates from UA, this sole member of Class 1A remaining. Everyone else had either died or dropped out. As Izuku would graduate, being the sole member walk across the stage, rain clouds would begin forming. He would put his hero costume on for the first time ever as a pro hero after graduating before walking out. He would sit down on a bench outside, rain clouds dropping, sending rain flying down. His costume making him stick out amongst the crowd, all trying just to get back home before the rain would take hold of them, drenching them. However, one person would stop, a child. He would look up towards Izuku, asking him, "Hey, mister, are you a pro hero?" Izuku would slowly nod his head. "Yeah, I am." What's your name?" he says in excitement. 1A, he would say, as the kid would look off in confusion. Why 1A? Why? Doesn't matter, kid. I'm a hero now. I used to be a classmate. He would laugh, looking up towards the sky. I used to be a classmate, he would say once more, tears welling up in his eyes, being reminded of all those he had lost. The rain fully coming down now, his hair sticking to his forehead as tears would begin falling from his face as well. And that is where What If Deku Had a Copy Quirk comes to an end. Izuku becomes the pro hero he always wanted to be, but at an extreme cost. Everyone around him had died, leaving Izuku the last remaining student, the last classmate, hence why he used to be one. I hope you all did enjoy this What If, and I know it was a little darker than usual. I'm sorry if you didn't enjoy it. I hope you guys did, though. I wanted to make it more storytelling based. I'm trying to experiment, get better at storytelling too. So, yeah, I thank you all for watching. Please comment your what if suggestions down in the comment section below. And goodbye.